So hi, my name's Kevin Jorge, and as the introduction said, I work for BBC Studios. I have to apologise, my colleague John isn't here as well. He was going to give you some interesting stories and anecdotes about his experience working for Paramount previously and with kind of big IP like Star Trek and Top Gun. I did debate whether to try and tell some of his stories myself, but I decided against it. It's probably best I leave that. So I'll just really focus on what BBC Studios does, some of the IP we have. I think Ian, kind of rightly mentioned, obviously the dream for most people is to have their own IP and develop that out and continue to be able to exploit that. But one other opportunity is obviously to acquire IP from IP holders such as ourselves. So. BBC Studios, we've been making TV content for over 50 years. We pride ourselves on kind of making the best British content. We're the commercial arm of the BBC Group. We're the largest distributors of TV content outside of the US, the major US studios. And we're the most awarded production company in the UK as well. And hopefully you'll have heard of at least some of the kind of programs we make. So, kind of how can you look at acquiring those IP, and how would you assess those, or kind of look to match your products to those IP? So we're going to talk through a couple of examples of some of the IP we have, and then kind of what we look for when discussing opportunities with partners. But Doctor Who is the first example. It's the world's longest running sci-fi series, so it's been running for over 60 years now. It has 5 million Facebook fans across 240 territories, a billion views of its content on YouTube. So, this is a big global brand. Watched by families, but also kind of, especially with the new 13th Doctor as well, was really engaged young female fans as well. So, as an IP, I think that there's a lot of value there. But what would we look for when we're discussing this IP with potential partners? Well, it's about understanding what the DNA of a brand is. It's not just the numbers behind it, but what makes it successful, and then kind of what would we be looking for. So Doctor Who is all about brains over brawn. You've got lots of IP out there where there's all sorts of combat and shooting and all types of violence, but Doctor Who is all about solving problems using ingenuity and working together as a team. Now that can provide some interesting game mechanics given the right ideas or the right genre. It's all about adventures across time and space, and it's about kind of humour and heart. So again, there's 60 years worth of stories there ripe for adaptation, and hundreds of characters. There's very few IP out there with such a ready-made kind of assembly of characters, and that's inclusive of an ever-evolving hero. There's very few brands as well which, written into the very foundations and core of the IP, have a lead hero who continually changes. And that allows for some really interesting opportunities and for the brand to stay relevant and fresh. And also timeless villains. So, the Daleks are iconic still to this day. So, we look for opportunities in genres and games which will, showcase those characters. But, certain genres need that kind of really wide range of characters, from card collection games or RPGs, any games of those nature, a brand like this would really work. And the fact that it's an ongoing series, you're going to continually get that new set of content, year in, year out, to keep your games fresh. Another example would be Top Gear. So again, a long-running series, the Guinness Book of Records for the most watched factual TV program in the world still. 350 million viewers globally across 200 countries. So again, it's that, global, kind of audience which these IP bring. And Top Gear, still very much for the male 18 to 30s kind of petrol heads is, kind of still really, a big brand for them. And then, how would we match that? So, at its heart, Top Gear is all about mates, motors, and mucking about. It's not just about, kind of supercars and, kind of setting, fast laps around racetracks. It's about, kind of doing unconventional things, unexpected things. We have a history of, we did car football way before Rocket League was ever a thing. We've raced fighter planes, trains, you name it, we've done it in a car. We've created our own vehicles. So, it's not cheap to go out there and license, kind of cars from the big manufacturers. We built our own tractor, the world's fastest tractor. Other brands, don't have these, ridiculous and fun, kind of vehicles, and it kind of sets us apart. And then the Top Gear test track and the Stig are still iconic. The Stig is still, instantly recognisable to a lot of people. And then BBC Earth, which a lot of people equate to Sir David Attenborough, and rightly so. But these are global TV programmes. We create over 60 hours of landmark TV and movie content per year for BBC Earth. 500 million people watch it, around the world. And more so in other territories as well. So for Blue Planet 2, there was over 250 million views of the Blue Planet 2 album in China. And apparently, it slowed down the internet in China because so many people were trying to stream this content. And not only family audiences, but more and more kind of Generation Z, who are obviously super engaged in this type of content because with everything going on, people are starting to have more appreciation of the world around them. And who better to come to than the people who have been making content highlighting and celebrating the world for over 50 years. And I've snuck this slide in as well just because it still amazes me. But if you look on IMDb at the top-rated TV series of all time, within the top 6 series, 3 of them are BBC Earth titles, which I find personally mind-blowing to be above some of those other programmes. But it's there. So people really love this content. And then, kind of how to match. And this has been a brand which historically we were never quite sure what to do, but more and more it's becoming clear that there's interest there, and especially with the, kind of new types of, new formats like VR and AR, it's becoming more and more clear kind of what we can do with this brand. And, what it's all about is raising big issues and provoking discussions about our planet. And I think, that is more and more relevant. I'm sure I don't need to kind of tell anyone in this room kind of what's going on around the world, but this, is very current. But celebrating, kind of the world and educating people through telling stories about the planet. And I think, kind of gaming gives another opportunity to do that with the right partner, the right technology, and the right genre. And it's a global authority on, subjects of nature, science, human race, and space. So it's not just about natural history. There are lots of parts, which make up this brand. And then, just to highlight, it's not just always about the big global IPs as well. There are smaller, more regional opportunities, more niche opportunities with smaller brands, which, again, Strictly or Dancing with the Stars globally, appeals to, a female skewing older audience. Question of Sport for that kind of hardcore quiz audience. Hey Dougie for preschool. There are so many of these IP out there, and given the right game engine and the right partner, there are really good opportunities there to make something work. And then there's always new stuff coming through every day. As I mentioned at the start of the slide, we're the biggest producer of TV content outside of the US studios, but that's a big exclusion. Obviously, US companies making a whole heap of TV. But I mean, one thing which we're working on now is an adaptation of the Discworld novels by Sir Terry Pratchett, which were sold over 80 million copies. So again, these big IPs are coming through all the time. It's hard to keep up with what everyone's doing, but they are out there, and there are people willing to have these conversations about these IP as well. And then just a few final thoughts, really, in terms of kind of what we look for when kind of people want to come and speak to us about the IP we have. I think it's important, not just to be interested in numbers, but to truly understand the DNA of the brand as well. So understand what makes it tick, understand what makes it successful. Show passion about the brand, and actually, kind of, it's priceless to have someone who really loves the brand, and if you can see that come through in the final product, that love, and treating it with respect as well, because ultimately, it's a beloved IP. And then lastly, it's not just about putting your IP on the top of a game and somehow it's going to kind of miraculously open up doors and bring these huge audiences. Ultimately, it has to be a good game, and it has to feel like it's an organic part of the universe of that IP as well. So it really has to integrate the brand fully to be successful. And that is it. Thank you very much for your time.
Fair enough. You finished 5 minutes early.
I did. That was John telling his stories.
That's BBC scheduling, you see, spot on. So has anyone got a question for the BBC? This is the BBC. It's the British Broadcast.
Just part of it.
Someone must have a So can you... I'll ask a question, because I've got a question. So can you kind of point to a recent partnership with a BBC brand that's gone on to be, sort of very successful? Obviously, the brands themselves are huge. I mean, Top Gear, Doctor Who, Strictly, etc.
Yeah, well, there's a game coming out in a couple of months' time, actually, with an American company called Eli Media, a game called Beyond Blue, which everyone's saying is Planet Earth, the game.
Okay.
So we kind of partnered with them and have made content available to them and worked with them on that. And I think that's getting a lot of traction, I think, because of that idea of it being a playable version of Blue Planet 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's highlighted, again, an interesting area. Like I mentioned, BBC Earth wasn't a brand we originally thought was that applicable to kind of core console gaming.
Yeah.
But we've got the console game coming out kind of based on and inspired by Blue Planet 2. So that's a really interesting opportunity for us, and we're looking to do more of that.
So ultimately, you're just looking for developers and publishers to come to you? How does it work? If I want to make a game with the BBC, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
Who do I talk to?
Historically, it was very much, we'd rely on people coming to us. Unfortunately, John, who isn't here, has joined the organisation and is out there speaking to people. He will work with potential partners to go and secure funding, find the right publishers.
Yeah.
So we are being a lot more active, kind of on the front foot, looking to go out there and engage people as well. So not just relying on people to come to us now.